Welcome to the Art of Living Free series with Anthony Silard, brought to you by theartoflivingfree.org. Today, Dr. Silard continues exploring why COVID-19 is the second social distancing threat to our way of life in 13 years. In Part 3, he covers strategies to help transform loneliness into connection.
Hi, I'm Anthony Silard, and welcome to the Art of Living Free. So what can we do, right? How can we personally take action so that even though this rates of depression, anxiety, loneliness, suicide, self-harm, plummeting empathy, all that's happening all around us, what can we do? Well, first we can understand that loneliness dysregulates. There are studies on this that show that the lonelier you are, the less you can regulate your emotions. And what happens from that is that we make social overtures to others, because this is what happens, by the way, when you feel lonely. The British psychologist Pamela Qualter, she calls it the reaffiliation motive. That when we're lonely, we want to reaffiliate, we want to take action to make more connections with others. So the problem, though, and this is based on research I've done with Sarah Wright at the University of Canterbury in New Zealand, is that when we try to make an effort to reestablish relationships with others, what happens is that because we're feeling lonely and because that dysregulates our emotions, we tend to not manage our emotions very well when we make those social overtures to others. So either we become like, we essentially express too much emotion and we seem too needy and dependent and hey, you know, like kind of like slobbering, hey, will you be my friend? So it's just like this constant like trying too much, showing too much emotion. And then the other way that loneliness dysregulates our emotions is that we don't show enough emotion. So we're scared to open up, and then others don't really connect with us because we're just like a dead fish, right? So essentially, one way or the other, loneliness can prevent us from forming the relationships that we want to form with others, that we need to form with others, to reduce our anxiety, to experience connection again. So one strategy that you can try there is what I call the inner detour. So if you're feeling lonely, you can transform loneliness into aloneness. So think about it this way. Being physically alone is not what creates loneliness. Two people can be alone and one person can experience distress and loneliness while the other person experiences joy and exhilaration and has these wonderful ideas and starts thinking about their life and feels connected with the world around them and nature. So there's actually there's a number of quotes about this that basically loneliness is the distress associated with being alone. Solitude is the joy, the glory associated with being alone. So being alone is not what causes your loneliness. So the inner detour means developing your self-dialogue and asking yourself, well, okay, so loneliness is here. Why are you here, loneliness, right? Ask it. So one thing I often suggest to people, my research is around emotion and leadership. One thing I suggest is when you're experiencing a lot of negative emotions, including loneliness, what you can do is invite your emotions over for dinner. Like imagine that you've got a dinner table and there's loneliness and there's anxiety and there's depression and there's envy and so forth, right? And just ask like, hey, okay, you're here, loneliness. So tell me, why'd you show up today? Like, what are you here to teach me? And then put yourself in the role of loneliness. Well, I'm here to teach you that you shouldn't spend 4 hours up until 3 a.m. playing Fortnite because you think you're connecting with your friends, but you're actually just like playing a war game by video rather than connecting in real time. So maybe you should stop doing that and instead ask a friend if they want to go out and grab an ice cream or go out for a meal or go out for a walk, right? And so forth. So you can ask each of your emotions, like why are they here? What did they show up to teach you? And then you can also, in that way, befriend your emotion. Because guess what? Loneliness is not the enemy. Depression is not the enemy. Anxiety is not the enemy. As soon as you make any emotion your enemy, you're making yourself your enemy. Because those emotions are a part of who you are. They're a part of all of us. We as human beings, we experience every emotion known to humankind. We experience anger and loneliness and depression and anxiety. We experience joy and exhilaration and contentment and like awe and wonder. All of these emotions are part of the human experience. If you fight against those emotions, you're fighting against yourself, and the casualty will be you, right? If instead you befriend those emotions, again, ask them what they showed up to teach you, then you can learn from them. And so that inner detour is probably the best way that I know of to manage loneliness, is just ask yourself why it's shown up, try to understand it, try to transform it into solitude, and then also into social engagement. And this time, remind yourself when you go out and interact with people, I'm not interacting with this person because I need for them to be my friend, right? I'm interacting with them because I want to have a relationship with them. Want and need are two very different things, right? So when we need something, we become desperate. It's like a hungry person is not a good judge of food, right? You need something too much, you go, oh wow, this is the best crackers I've ever had, right? If you're hungry enough, believe me, you can take anything. Like, you'd be like, oh my God, I've never eaten something so delicious, right? So that's how we evaluate friends. That's why never go look for a house or apartment to rent or buy when you feel desperate and you don't feel like you have a comfortable place to live. Because the first place you see, oh, this would be great, I love it. Okay, it's got the one bathroom, the toilet's broken, and there's mold everywhere, but oh, this could be wonderful, right? Because you're desperate. So the first part is to build your inner strength. Take that inner detour, build your sense of self, and then go into those interactions, not seeking someone out of need, but not seeking love, but willing to offer love, offer caring, offer acceptance. I have this one saying, which is friends are like priorities. If you have too many, you end up with none, right? I would also say that I was seeking a friend and there was no one. I was a friend and there was everyone. Because basically you have givers and takers out there in the world. Adam Grant has this great book about that, about how we have these, people kind of fall into these two categories. And when you go out there, like, again, you're salivating, like, oh, I need friends. People see that and they're like, yeah, maybe not, right? Because they're just, because they have limited time and they want to be with people who are there to give, not there to take. Whereas when you go out saying like, oh, you know what? I really like this person for their intrinsic qualities, their characteristics, who they are, their values. I'd enjoy spending some time with them. And not just like, oh, here, help solve all my problems, but, I'm here, I'd like to listen to you, understand about your life, because you're coming from a position of strength. So one other strategy I'd like to share is about, and many people ask me this, like, well, I know you wrote this book, Screened In, Art of Living Free in the Digital Age, but now, during a pandemic, is that still relevant? Because now, like, we need to be on Zoom, we need to connect with each other through our phones and such. And, I always reply the same. I say, well, there's nothing wrong with using Zoom. There's nothing wrong with using our phones. The question is, are we directing our use of these devices and softwares, or are they directing us? And so, for example, and I see many children, and it's very sad to see kids who are in school spending hours and hours every day on Zoom. And whenever I talk with their teachers, I say, have you thought about that, like, instead of having like a 2-hour session on Zoom where these kids are just going to be like eyes glazed over and like barely able to function from looking at the screen for so long, have you thought about having like the first 20 minutes with video and then the next hour by audio, and just saying, okay, no one needs to look at their screen anymore. Let's just turn off the videos and we're going to continue with our class and have a conversation, but we don't need to be looking at each other, right? And I think the same thing when you have work meetings. When I meet with my team members, we usually, if we have an hour-and-a-half meeting, first 15 minutes is video, and research has shown that for virtual teams, that initial connection in person is what creates a cohesive team. But then after that, it doesn't have to always be meeting in person. They can be virtual, right? The same thing with Zoom. Like the first 15 minutes, you have the richness of media because you're seeing each other and you make a kind of a social connection more so than if you were just audio. And then you could spend the next hour, just turn video off, talking, And the other thing I hear people feel, this is all about control, right? People say, well, if people don't have video on, how do I know they're working? I hear leaders share that with me all the time. Well, guess what? If they have their video on, how do you know they're working? Because I can have my video on and be looking right at you, and I can actually also be looking at my emails or Facebook or whatever I want to look at on my screen. It's not news to anyone that you can have multiple screens open at the same time, right? So I think using Zoom and our phones when it's really for an important purpose that we cannot replicate elsewhere, but otherwise trying to modulate our use of these technologies so it doesn't become overdone. Because the more it does, the more we feel less creative and innovative. We start to feel again that we've been trying to connect with others, but at the end of the day, it's like, have you ever had this feeling where you feel you've been on the internet for hours or on video chats and the internet, and then now there's a lot of happy hours on Zoom and such. So you've been at all these things, and then you close your computer, and it just dawns on you like, I felt like I was at a party, but there's no party. I'm just here by myself. And that's that existential dread, the sort of the feelings of disconnection that permeate most of us these days. And that's why we can't or we should not overuse these technologies, because again, it ends up we go online, we use these technologies seeking social connection, we end up with social information, and at the end we feel lonelier. So it's up to each of us to find that balance.
Life offers us many challenges, and the artoflivingfree.org offers new ways of thinking so we can see these challenges from a new angle and overcome them. Whether it's Anthony Silard's free blog, video or podcast series, his book, Screened In: The Art of Living Free in the Digital Age, or personalized courses, the artoflivingfree.org will help you refine your life vision and then transform it into action. Find out more at theartoflivingfree.org.